I'm going to talk about the life of Frida Kahlo because she was one of those who contributed the formation of a new kind of identity for women and is recognized today as a symbol, and she is my hero. The reason is that she suffered all her life but she never gave up and she go ahead. Before talking about her life and art, I'm going to refer some artists who admire her for her struggle, for his great love of life and art. The name of the album Viva la Vida of Coldplay is inspired by one of Frida's paintings. The painting is a watermelon and appears one phrase, Viva la Vida. The vocalist of British group said caught his attention because someone who didn't have an easy life in a picture painted something praising life. Madonna confirmed its taste and admiration for Frida Kahlo, and in the case of her video Bedtime Story, in which several scenes are inspired by famous paintings of the artist. The lead singer of the band Red Hot Chili Peppers dedicated the song Scar Tissue to Frida. Her original name was Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo Calderón, but is better known as Frida Kahlo, and was a Mexican painter. She was born in Coyoacán on July 6 in 1907. She led an unconventional life and was bisexual. Her paintings thematically revolve around her biography and her own misery. In 1904, 3 years before the birth of Frida, the family moved to the town of Coyoacán in geography center of the city, well known as Casa Azul. Frida was the third daughter of a German photographer of Hungarian Jewish origin, Guillermo Kahlo, and his second wife, Matilde Calderón. Her two older sisters were Matilde and Adriana, then born after her only brother who survived a few days. In July 1907, Frida was born, and only 11 months later, her young sister Cristina. Also, Frida had three older sisters by the father and his first marriage in 1894 with Maria Cardena Espino. Frida's life was marked from an early age by physical suffering and diseases. The first disease was polio in 1913, beginning a series of successive conditions, various injuries, accidents, and operations. This illness forced her to remain 9 months in bed and left a permanent sequel right leg much thinner than the left. Encouraged by her father as part of her rehabilitation, Frida practiced various sports, some unusual in Mexican society of her time for a girl, as football or boxing. The constant surgeries and medical treatments made Frida develop differently and frequently unable to participate with other children. One example of the pains that reflect the theme of the loneliness of her childhood is for inhabitants of Mexico City. On September 17 in 1925, had a serious accident when the bus she was traveling in was hit by a tram, being crushed against a wall and completely destroyed. She was returning home from school. Her spine was fractured into 3 parts and suffering fractures in 2 ribs, collarbone, and 3 in the pubic bone. Her right leg was fractured in 11 parts, dislocated her right foot and her left shoulder, and a hand pierced from the left hip and out the pubic bone. The medicine of her time racked with multiple surgeries, at least 32 throughout her life. During her long convalescence, she began to paint in a more continuous way. In September in 1926, she paints her first self-portrait. Her paintings reflect on the events of her life and her feelings. And in 1927, her painting became more complex. Frida met Diego Rivera by Tina Modotti and they got married. Their relationship consists love affairs with other people, creative link, hate, and they divorced in 1939 and they got married again a year later. They called the marriage an union between an elephant and a dog because Diego was huge and fat, while she was small and thin. Diego said to Frida Dogface, Spanish cara de perro, as a nickname. Frida, because of her injuries, was never to have children, which took many years to accept. She had 3 abortions and she showed her sadness through the painting like Henry Ford Hospital. On November 6, in 1939, there are 2 important pictorial productions in this period, the 2 Fridas and the 2 nudes in a forest. In 1953, they had to amputate the leg below the knee because a gangrene infection. This threw her into a deep depression that led her to attempt suicide on a couple of occasions. During that time wrote poems in her journals, mostly related to pain and suffering. After a time she had to use a wheelchair. Frida Kahlo died in Coyoacán on July 13 in 1954. Her last painting was a very sketch of watermelons in very bright colors. In one of these pieces, with her signature, can be read Viva la vida, Coyoacán, 1954, México. The last words in her diary were, I hope the exit joyful and I hope never to return. Spanish is, espero alegre la salida y espero no volver jamás.